Hi, my name is Tasha Medford, and I'm going to be doing the second part of our presentation on bulimia. For my portion of the project, I found an article titled Risk Factors, Correlates, and Markers for Early Onset Bulimia. So the objective for this study was to investigate specific risk factors and markers associated with the development of bulimia, specifically in adolescent females. There were two different hypotheses for this study. The first hypothesis was to determine whether or not familial problems were linked to eating disorder cases. And then the second hypothesis was to figure out if deliberate self-harm and obesity were also risk factors. For this study, the subjects were all females. There were 79 total, and they were ranged between the age of 13 and 20 years old, with the average age of being 17 years old. All the females within the program were diagnosed with bulimia, and they were all selected from a cognitive behavioral therapy group. Now, to get into that group, all the subjects were referred by their general practitioner. The procedures done in this study, it was conducted by 3 trained researchers, and they assessed the participants using 2 different interviews. The first interview assessed the weight of the participants as well as their eating disorder history. And their history included the onset of the disorder as well as the duration or the severity of the symptoms. This first interview also assessed the personal and family history in terms of obesity or any type of other mental health disorders. The second interview was a risk assessment inventory, which was used to identify any biological, psychological, or social factors that could have affected the development of the eating disorder. So some of the factors that the researchers studied were family factors, whether or not the parents were together or divorced, peer relationships, so how the girls in the study engaged well with their peers, if there was any weight-related criticism that the females experienced either at home or at school, and they also took a look at both the medical and mental health history of each participant. Now, in terms of the results, there was no evidence to support either hypothesis. So the first hypothesis was to determine if familial problems were concerned, and then the second one related it back to self-harm and obesity. So the results for this study did not support either hypothesis. There was no evidence to support that family problems, self-harm, or obesity were linked as risk factors for bulimia. The only significant finding was that participants that actually were diagnosed with bulimia had a earlier set age for their first menstrual cycle, and they also reported having a different pathway of symptoms. So they might not have went through the typical process of maybe dieting and then having the full-on disorder. One of the other findings was that the females in this particular eating disorder group, they were more likely to binge eat first versus trying extreme dieting methods. So at the conclusion of the study, the researchers, for their discussion, talked a lot about the need for increased awareness of how bulimia is developed, specifically in adolescent females, and then also identifying risk factors for developing bulimia early on, so even before adolescence. The next part of the presentation, I just went over some national website resources. I found 5 websites that can be utilized to help people that were diagnosed with bulimia as well as their caregivers. So the first program I found, or website, was the National Eating Disorder Association. This program really works to support both the individuals and the families that are affected by eating disorders. They serve to prevent, cure, and offer access to quality care. Their main vision is to one day have a world without eating disorders. And on the website, there's multiple links, and they provide information as well as referral hotlines. Some of the information on the website includes where and how to find treatment, different support groups or therapy groups that you can find within your local area, as well as some recent research studies and clinical trials. They also offer programs to provide personal support to individuals with eating disorders as well as their family members, and they also help for those in recovery. The next website I found is the Office on Women's Health. Now, this one is more of a formal website. It really just provides definitions of the bulimia as well as other eating disorders. It has a list of proven treatment options as well as how to differentiate them. They have reading material, so that includes research on eating disorders as well as material from people that have also had the disorder. And towards the end of the page, you can find local organizations that you can actually connect with specifically to help with other concerns related to your eating disorder. The next one is the Families Empowered and Strengthening Treatment of Eating Disorders. This is an international organization. They have about 6,000 members and they run entirely on volunteers and off of donations. This organization is geared towards the family members of those living with eating disorders. They provide information for family members as well as mutual support. They have forums that families can go on to communicate with other families about their concerns and also just ways for families to support one another. This organization is really big on advocating for research and education to reduce the eating disorders, and their main motto is that empowering caregivers is one of the most essential parts of the recovery process for the individual with the eating disorder. So if you click on the link, the website includes a lot of different educational videos that you can watch. They have definitions to differentiate the multiple different eating disorders. And as I said before, they have forums for the caregivers to communicate with other families throughout the world. The next one is the National Institute of Mental Health. This is similar to the website from the Office of Women's Health. It's a real formalized website. It provides definitions of eating disorders and specifically bulimia. This website also has a list of signs and symptoms to look for, and one of the things it does is it tells a lot of caregivers, parents, and even teachers to look out for these signs and symptoms as ways to tell and indicate that your child might have an eating disorder. They have identified some risk factors. Some of the risk factors includes an unstable family, concerns with peers, going through puberty. So those are the risk factors that the website specifically has identified. They also list a lot of different treatment options, which includes cognitive behavioral therapy, different types of support groups, and they also have evidence-based therapies and clinical trials. The last website I found was the National Association for Anorexia Nervosa and Associated Disorders. Now, this is a nonprofit organization that works on supporting, increasing awareness, advocating for those who have eating disorders and family members. They also have a section on their websites for you to get referrals to different agencies that can specifically help you in your community. They have information, reading material, and videos to educate people on eating disorders, and they strive to prevent future young people from gaining or from getting an eating disorder. This is one of the oldest organizations in the United States that is geared towards fighting eating disorders. They help people struggling with eating disorders as well as providing resources for the community and their loved ones around them. So that completes the end of our presentation on bulimia nervosa.